oral questions. Questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Litigation Guideline 14. It was this Liberal government instructing federal lawyers not to defend property rights and argue that they extinguished other claims in the federal Cowichan decision. The judge came forward and said, okay, and agreed that Aboriginal title then came before homeowners' property rights in British Columbia. Now seniors and families toss and turn at night wondering if they even own their homes. Will the Prime Minister reverse course, stop muzzling federal lawyers, revoke Guideline 14, and defend property rights in BC?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I rose in this House a few weeks ago and made clear, this government will always defend private property rights. That's why this government immediately appealed the decision with respect to Cowichan on September 8th. We fundamentally disagree with the BC Supreme Court's decision. We will use all viable legal options to address and protect private property rights always in this country.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
But, Mr. Speaker, he's banning his lawyers from making those viable legal arguments because Guideline 14 is still on the federal government's website. He, as the client, is instructing the lawyer not to make the valid legal argument that fee simple private property rights extinguish all other claims. If he makes the same arguments, he'll get the same results. Millions of British Columbia homeowners wonder if they even own their home. They're tossing and turning every single night, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister admit the Liberal government made a mistake, unmuzzle the lawyers, get rid of Guideline 14, and put property rights first in court?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's sad. The person who's tossing and turning every night is the Leader of the Opposition, trying to come up with new ways to stoke fear and division in this country. We will always defend private property rights in this country. That's why we immediately appealed. That's why we are acceding with the Montrose claim. That's why we're supporting the City of Richmond, the province of BC, in this important case. We will take all viable legal options. We respect property rights and Indigenous rights to reconciliation.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
In 2014, the world was experiencing an energy crisis. There were wars in Syria and Iraq, in Ukraine. And at the same time as the cost of a barrel was $100, the cost at the pump was $1.38. That's in 2014 under Stephen Harper. Today, the price of oil is lower, but the price at the pump is 40 cents higher a litre. So these are not global effects. These are Liberal effects. Will the Prime Minister do away with these taxes and policies for a weak dollar so that Canadians can afford to fill up their tanks? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the government has already reduced the consumer carbon tax, 18 cents a litre. We suspended the federal fuel tax. There are things that have changed since the Harper government. The impact on refineries, the issue of supply. But one thing doesn't change. The Leader of the Opposition is against every measure to help and support Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, there was a world energy crisis, wars in Syria, Iraq, and Ukraine. But at the very moment that oil hit $100 a barrel all around the world, here in Canada, it was only $1.38 at the pump. Those were the Harper days in 2014. And now today, with oil prices being lower on a worldwide level, gas prices are over 40 cents a litre higher. Those are not world impacts. Those are Liberal impacts. Will the Prime Minister reverse his policies of high Liberal taxes and a weak Canadian dollar so Canadians can afford to fill up at the pump?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, some things have changed since the Harper days, thankfully. One of them is refinery margins, which are up by 40 cents in Canada. 40 cents, that's a curious number. Refinery margins up because of the loss of petrol. But one other thing that hasn't changed is the Minister of Opposition is against Childcare, leader of opposition, childcare. He's against dental care. He's against pharmacare. He's against everything that supports Canadians in this affordability crisis.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Lots has changed since Harper time. Gas's prices are more than 40 cents a litre higher, even though the world oil price is actually lower. And now he's made up this new excuse that there aren't enough refineries under his leadership. Maybe he should get out of the way and let refineries build in Canada, Mr. Speaker. But this is a Prime Minister who likes to blame the rest of the world. He's given Canadian households the worst debt anywhere in the G7, with delinquencies up 18% year over year. Will he stop making excuses and reverse the inflationary policies before Canadians lose their homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, what the Liberal policies are delivering is wages for Canadians that are growing faster than inflation. What the government's policy is delivering is inflation lower in Canada than the United States. What the Liberal government's policies are delivering is female employment that is 5 percentage points above the United States. This country's working. We're moving forward. He's trying to hold it back.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Things are great for the Brookfield class, Mr. Speaker, for those who stash their cash in offshore tax havens and take government handouts getting rich. But for the rest of Canadians, here's what Equifax says. Insolvency volumes have increased to levels not seen since 2009, up 19% year over year. Balanced delinquency rates climbed 32% year over year. Q1 saw insolvency volume hit 17-year highs, partly due to escalating financial strain on mortgage holders. Mr. Speaker, if things are so good and affordable, why is it that 1.5 million Canadians missed at least one essential payment in the first 3 months of the year?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government is moving forward this economy in the face of a global energy crisis, in the face of a tariff crisis, in the face of wars. This country is the second strongest economy in the G7. We are growing strong. We have the strongest fiscal position in the G7. We have a plan. Canada has a bright future.
Hear, hear.
L'Honorable Député de Saint-Jean.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister must respect democracy. Yesterday, he did the opposite by announcing that he would use the Clarity Act to interfere in Alberta's referendum question. Any province or Quebec has the right to ask its citizens the question of its choice in a referendum. Citizens have the right to answer freely, and the majority wins with 50% of the votes plus one. This concerns only two groups, the government that asks the question and the citizens who answer it. That is democracy. It's that simple. Will the Prime Minister respect that? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I am the Prime Minister. As Prime Minister, I need to respect the advice of experts. I've just heard from the Council of Experts on the applicability of the Clarity Act, and it does not apply on the question in Alberta. But in the Clarity Act, you need to have a clear expression of a will by a majority, a clear majority of the people in the province in order to have a sincere vote, a sincere secession vote in Canada.
Saint-Jean.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean, Mr. Speaker. Respecting democracy means avoiding interfering in referendum questions, but mostly it means avoiding interfering in the citizens' response. A clear majority is 50% of the votes plus one. The Prime Minister knows this. All his laws are passed with 50% plus one. His majority depends on 50% plus one. Even his Parliamentary Secretary for Justice said the rule is 50% plus one. That is democracy, except for referenda because of the Clarity Act. Will the Prime Minister repeal this authoritarian overreach? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, you have to respect democracy. You have to respect parliamentary legislation and the decisions of the Supreme Court of Canada. Under the Clarity Act, the House of Commons must consider the following factors to establish this determination of a clear vote: the scope of the majority that are valid expressed in favor of the successionistic option, and the percentage of eligible electors who took part in the referendum, it is not 50% plus one. The honourable member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, there is no place in a democracy for a law that does not respect the will of the people expressed by 50% of the votes plus one. There's no place in a democracy for a law that overturns the people's decisions by claiming after the fact that either the question or the result of the vote was not clear enough. There is no place in a democracy for a law that flouts the rules of the ballot when the result just doesn't suit the government. This is an authoritarian overreach we must avoid. Will the Prime Minister finally repeal the anti-democratic law on referendum clarity? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we respect the laws of Canada. The Clarity Act is clear. At the same time, we respect the will of Quebecers, that is to build a strong, resilient Quebec within a strong and resilient, independent Canada.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister is fond of blaming the rest of the world for the terrible economy he has created here at home, but the other G7 countries face tariffs and high oil prices, and none of them have anywhere near the level of household debt here in Canada. By far, Canadian households with $1.77 of debt for every dollar of income are far more indebted than any other country, in fact, a third higher than the second worst. I quote Equifax. The missed payment levels highlight severe financial strain in high-priced markets, with mortgage delinquencies up 52% in Ontario, 36% in BC. If people are doing so well under his leadership, why are they missing their mortgage payments?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, while that leader's focused on podcasts, fitness videos, and empty parking lot press conferences, on this side of the House, we're focused on delivering affordability for Canadians. We just paused the federal excise tax on gas, 10 cents a litre. We canceled the consumer carbon tax. That is 18 cents a litre. Combined, that is 28 cents a litre savings for Canadians. Time for that leader to put down the kettlebells, help us build Canada strong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Come on, the Prime Minister could have done better than that. Come on. If he's going to hide under his desk and get someone else to speak in his favor, he's got to get something better than that. That's about as good as his economic policies, Mr. Speaker. He owes Canadians answers. The reality is that we have the highest household debt of any G7 country by far. And we've seen that in the first quarter of this year, there's been a 19% increase in year-over-year delinquencies. Canadians cannot make their minimum payments. Instead of smirking and hiding behind his backbench, will the Prime Minister stand up, announce a reverse course so Canadians can pay their bills?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families. One moment, we'll wait. Okay, the Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, this afternoon I had lunch with Sean Strickland from the Canadian Build.
All right, I couldn't hear who the minister had lunch with. So she can start from the top. She can start from the top. I didn't hear who the minister had lunch with because there was too much noise on this side. Matters to me. I'd like to know. The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Well, since those guys don't know how to pick up a check, in fact, I paid for lunch and I took Sean Strickland, president of the Canadian Building Trades Union, out for lunch. Do you know why, Mr. Speaker? Because we want to hear their ideas about how we make sure that these good union jobs, but that, by the way, employers need all across the country, come to fruition. And Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Building Trades Union, the operating engineers who are here in Ottawa today are all so excited about the plan to build Canada strong, to get major projects off the ground using good union labor that provides great paying jobs, something that I know they're going to...
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Canadians are skipping lunch because they can't afford to pay their bills, while this Prime Minister and the Brookfield class skip their tax bills. Meanwhile, here at home, Mr. Speaker, here's the reality. Equifax is out. this week with a new report. This is the organization that checks the credit scores of individual Canadians, saying that insolvency volumes have increased to levels not seen since 2019, 18 years ago, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister announce that he will reverse the inflationary, debt-ridden policies so that Canadians do not go bankrupt?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, last week I was in Marathon, Ontario to talk about mining. There's a mining boom in Northern Ontario, something I think these guys are not aware of. And you know what came up over and over and over again? The gratitude for a government that's taking seriously the investment into natural resource extraction in Northern Ontario, that's helping provinces in the country get natural resource projects off the ground, and the need to invest in the skilled trades workers that, by the way, create the great jobs with pensions in hard-working environments, something I think that member doesn't really understand.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we have 3.1 million Canadians will renew their mortgages over the next 2 years into much higher rates after this Liberal government, in particular, this Liberal Prime Minister, advising people to take on extra debt with the promise that rates would be low for long. Now, the chickens are coming home to roost with rate increases that threaten more and more people with the loss of their homes. In the first 3 months of this year, 1.5 million Canadians missed a payment on a credit card or a mortgage. Will the Prime Minister announce that he's reversing the inflationary high tax policy so Canadians keep their homes?
The Honourable Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, instead of the Leader of the Opposition lifting kettlebells, maybe he should come to Kitimat and see where we're building new LNG facilities. Maybe he should come to Dease Lake, where we're building the biggest mines in the world. Maybe he should come to Darlington, where we're building new nuclear reactors. Maybe he should come to Nova Scotia, where we're building new projects. Maybe instead of talking down Canada, he should start coming to see how we're building Canada.
You're right. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Bringing down Canada, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't help the Canadians who can't pay their bills for that minister to get up and take credit for projects that were approved 14 years ago, Mr. Speaker. Nor does it help when the Prime Minister of Canada refuses to even stand on his feet and defend his disastrous economic record at a time when our households are by far the most indebted anywhere in the G7. Why? Because they've blocked projects, because they've raised taxes, because they've caused inflation and the highest housing costs in the entire group of 7 nations. Will the Prime Minister reverse these inflationary policies before Canadians lose their homes?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
We know, Mr. Speaker, we know why this member asks all the questions. It's to save him writing the questions out for all of the other members of the bench that don't get to ask the questions. But while we're asking questions, when is that member going to answer why he would refuse saving thousands of dollars for Canadians on childcare? When is he going to justify his opposition to reducing taxes for Canadians? When is he going to justify his opposition to creating the Canada Child Benefit? All of these things save Canadians thousands of dollars. Why is he against them?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the reason I'm asking a few extra questions is because the Prime Minister only shows up once a week and he won't get out of his chair and answer them.
I didn't like that. I didn't like that. I didn't like that. I would ask the opposition leader to be careful of that. We're getting very close to the edge there. The member may continue.
Mr. Speaker, I know he's very fragile. He's not used to taking any difficult questions. But the reality is that Canadians cannot pay their bills. In the first year in office, he has driven up delinquencies, household delinquencies, by 18%. He's given Canadians the worst household debt in the G7. Delinquencies have climbed by 32% year over year. And in Q1, we saw a 17-year high due to financial strains in Canadian household finances. Will they get off the backs of Canadians so they can pay their bill?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
In the first year of this Prime Minister's tenure, we have the #1 leading economy in the G7 for foreign investment. In this Prime Minister's first year, we have approved major projects. We have approved
opposition.
Mr. Speaker, number one economy in terms of debt for households, number one economy in the cost of housing, number one economy in the cost of food inflation. Those are the only metrics on which this government is leading, and they are number two when it comes to unemployment, with that unemployment rate being a third higher than in the United States. And now we see the delinquencies and the missed payments leading to a potential bankruptcy crisis, while the Prime Minister sits and hides behind his backbench. Will he stand up, own up, take responsibility, and announce a reverse policy so Canadians can pay their bill?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions and the CRA. We'll give it a moment. We'll give it a moment. Are we ready? Are we ready for the answer? The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Do your top. Mr. Speaker, let's do a comparison. World-class statesman on this side. World-class business and economic leader. On that side, empty parking lot press conferences with slogans, gimmicks, and props. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we're going to build the strongest economy in the G7, the most resilient economy in the G7. We're cutting taxes. We're investing in Canada. Time for him to stop the fitness videos. Help us build Canada strong.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, CTV reports that the member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie is considering leaving the Liberals this week, and the Minister of Industry seems to agree with him. She actually defends the Liberals' shift towards oil by saying that we're in an energy crisis and that's affecting gas prices. Well, a new pipeline in 10 years from now is not going to affect today's gas prices. Does she realize that she's proving the MP right by confirming that the Liberals are jettisoning the environment to sell more oil? The Honourable Minister for the Environment. Mr. Speaker, if we want to discuss what I defend and what I'm working on, last week we launched our electricity strategy. That is something that Hydro-Quebec asked for when they discussed these matters with us. They wanted an income credit for investment, and that will be a huge help within the network and also to broaden the interconnections between provinces. And that's actually what we've done with the province of Alberta, with interconnections that they'll have with other provinces. So we are continuing to do excellent work to reduce emissions and growing our country. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, this is climate betrayal. The Prime Minister is going to lose the member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. This is greenwashing. Yet there's still about 15 Liberals who still think that the Prime Minister cares about the environment. They wrote to him to express that they were concerned about the pipeline. Well, you know what? The Prime Minister responded in the media to his 15 or so MPs. He said, there are 160 other MPs in the Liberal caucus. Mr. Speaker, with a response like that, soon there will be one fewer MP. What are the other 15 waiting for to follow him out the door? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Nature. Mr. Speaker, I'm extremely proud to be a part of this team. And despite the comments from the other side, I know we will reach carbon neutral by 2050. I know we will protect 30% of Canada's landmass, the land and the waters, by 2030. I know that we will be working with Canadians to find a strategy that will mean we can meet our targets, not a strategy that divides us, a strategy that unites us. We will get there, and that's how we will build Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent à Kyawenhak. Mr. Speaker, there is nothing more essential than good food. Unfortunately, the reality is brutal for Canadian families. 2.2 million Canadians rely on food banks for their meals every month, and half of the number is children. Food prices are rising twice as fast as inflation, and Canada has the worst food inflation among G7 countries. That is the record after 10 years of Liberal governance. Will the Liberal Prime Minister finally put an end to his costly budgets and allow Canadians to make ends meet? The Honourable Minister.
Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The member across the way is right to say that, yes, there are Canadians that are having a hard time dealing with the cost of living. That is a challenge. What's difficult to understand, Mr. Speaker, is why at every turn this member votes against the very measures that would help these Canadians. For instance, the Groceries and Essentials benefit. On June 5th, that's 12 million Canadians that would be receiving a check to help them with groceries. Just think about the dental care plan. 20,000 people in his riding are benefiting from that. He voted against that. And another measure, Mr. Speaker, the child benefit in his riding, that's $33 million that he's voting against. If these great announcements worked, there wouldn't be such a problem with people eating. That's the reality after 10 years of talk. Sure, they talk about things, they claim that everything is fine. The reality is otherwise. 1 in 4 Canadian families is experiencing food insecurity. Everything that's essential is skyrocketing. Housing costs. The cost of gas has increased by 29%. That's the reality for Canadians on a daily basis, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister understand that spending the money you don't have only means a higher credit card bill for our children and more inflation? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just mentioned the list of the very programs that he's been voting against every time that would help people in his riding. So as far as getting lectures from them, I don't think so. On this side of the House, what sets us apart is, yes, we think we need social programs and direct help, but we also have a vision for the future. We're building major projects like the recent announcement at the Port of Quebec that would be a 6-container port, like Contrecoeur, like Nouveau Monde Graphite, like the high-speed rail, like training for young people. That's the government's vision to build a strong Canada.
L'honorable député de Beauce.
The honourable member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, with this Liberal government, it's always the same, more of the same. Higher costs, higher taxes, higher spending, and above all, less money in the pockets of Canadian families. The Liberals' inflationary deficits have led us to $1 trillion in debt. This Prime Minister, just another seriously costly Liberal. Mr. Speaker, the question is simple. When will the Prime Minister stop adding to Canada's debt and to the credit card bills of people in my region, the Beauce? The Honourable Secretary of State.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to point out that the first thing we did as a government is to cut taxes for 22 million Canadians, and soon we will be providing grocery support for 12 million Canadians, which will help for weekly costs. In my colleague's riding, the one who just mentioned this question, I don't think he supported the child benefit, but it helps 11,400 families in his riding. Aside from that, dental care benefits are received by 29,000 people in his riding of Beauce. He also voted against that program.
Alfred Lloydminster, Meadow Lake.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals aren't proposing measures that will make life more affordable for Canadians. We know that their policies are driving up inflation and making life more expensive. Families are paying more for gas, groceries, and housing. And now Global News is reporting that many Canadians are spending more than their entire income on food and rent. Canadians were promised relief from this Prime Minister, but he has delivered more costs, more taxes, more debt on the national credit card. Conservatives have a real plan to deliver relief by removing all federal fuel taxes for the year. On what date will these Liberals finally adopt it?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Rural Development. Through the chair, I will remind you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. More good news, as my Minister of Finance would like to point out. The good news is canola sales to China are happening, Mr. Speaker. Uranium sales to India are happening, Mr. Speaker. Canada is eliminating interprovincial barriers, Mr. Speaker. We're building a great Canadian economy, Mr. Speaker. And the best news is we're sitting side by side, standing alongside of Saskatchewan to continue building that Saskatchewan economy, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Niagara Falls, Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Speaker, this Liberal Prime Minister falsely claimed to Canadians that affordability is the best it's ever been in over a decade. Well, 11 years into this Liberal government, 1 in 4 Canadians is living in a food-insecure household. 2 million Canadians are visiting a food bank each month, and over 13,000 residents in Niagara Falls need the services of our food bank, Project Share. Conservatives have a real plan to give Canadians relief from Liberal inflation by removing all federal fuel taxes for the rest of the year. On what date will these Liberals adopt it?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
There are Canadians, certainly, Mr. Speaker, who are experiencing hardship, but they won't find a plan for their future on the Conservative side, with all due respect. He talks about food prices. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition talked about food prices. Mr. Speaker, there is no plan. In fact, on that side, they want to cut every support that goes towards that. The school food program, Mr. Speaker, the Canada Child Benefit, dental care, child care, the list goes on. This is the Conservative approach, to throw whatever they can at the wall, catch a few headlines. It won't work. Canadians need a serious government. That's exactly what they'll have. We'll continue to do this work, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, wildfires do not wait for us to be ready. I am reminded of the wildfires in my riding of South Shore St. Margaret's. Our government recognizes the need to work together as a nation to be prepared so that we can protect all Canadians. That's why our government has committed $316 million through Budget 2025 to the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre to lease firefighting aircrafts to establish a surge capacity. Can the Minister of Management or Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience update the House on how we are better preparing for
The Honourable Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We made a commitment to bolster our wildfire aerial capacity.
Minister may continue. It may continue. I know that was a bit jarring, but the Minister may continue.
And that's exactly what we've delivered. Contracts are now in place to lease 10 additional wildfire aircraft that will support provinces and territories starting this wildfire season. And in line with our government's Buy Canadian policy, each of the companies leasing aircraft to CIFC is a Canadian firm. This investment will protect lives, homes, and communities for years to come.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Canadians get up to another headline of the immigration minister botching her job. Corruption runs rampant in her department. Criminals walk away with discount sentences. She's issuing 215,000 new work permits while Canadian kids can't find jobs, with no plan to deport the temporary residents who won't leave. And today we learned that she's covering the premium health care costs of nearly 74,000 people whose asylum claims have already been rejected as fraudulent. How does it feel to be failing so publicly, so repeatedly on a file that's so important, Minister?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm actually very glad to receive this question today because the Parliamentary Budget Officer verified today what we have known all along, and that is the reasons for the costs are tied to volumes, and volumes are coming down. We have substantially reduced the asylum numbers by 60%. Within 3 years, $200 million in annual savings from changes to the supplemental coverage that we have put in place. We are taking action, and it's working.
Yeah, that's right. The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
And Canadians know nothing she is doing is working. Half the people sitting beside her are saying the same thing out loud. It stops being opposition criticism, and it starts being a pattern with this minister. She can't handle the hard questions from across the aisle, and she needs to get a grip on what's actually happening in her ministry. The minister refused to answer a question yesterday. On Thursday, she has 4 hours at committee to make it right. Will she be there for the full 4 hours, or will we finally get somebody who's competent at their job?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know what that member doesn't understand. I've said, yes, I will be there for the 4 hours. There's nothing magical about that. That is exactly why I'm here. Let me continue, though, about the public parliamentary budget officer as well. Let me remind people that claimants are not just service users. They are also taxpayers. The people that she's talking about are real human beings. We give them work permit, and in 2023, the budget officer confirmed the amount of that went into general revenue for this population, which equated the amounts that they were getting. Thank you.
The honourable member for Riding Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, I'm really glad the honourable member brought up the parliamentary budget officer, because she just released a damning report revealing nearly 74,000 rejected asylum claimants remain eligible for luxury health care benefits under the Liberals' interim federal health program. This includes rejected asylum claimants who are listed as wanted for failing to show up at the removal proceedings. Yet under the Liberals, all these claimants still qualify for luxury health benefits like physiotherapy, counselling, and home care. Why are the Liberals providing better health care to rejected asylum claimants than hard-working Canadians?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the minister has just gone through and will be going through again this Thursday extensive questioning, and she will be defending results that have achieved incredible results in 1 year of government. We have reduced the number of temporary Canadians. We have reduced the number of asylum seekers. We have saved money for Canadians. The real question is, why are Conservatives against providing health care to some of the most vulnerable people on this earth, including claimants from Ukrainian war zones?
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
I don't think the Liberals understand how profoundly unfair the system is right now to everybody. The Liberals brought too many non-citizens into Canada too fast for healthcare to keep up, and millions of Canadians are waiting for basic medical services. Today, the PBO showed that there's 74,000 failed asylum seekers, people who have bogus asylum claims, who are getting benefits like vision care. This is costing hundreds of millions of dollars. Premium health benefits should be going to Canadians, not to failed asylum claimants, who should be removed from Canada. Why aren't they?
The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Mr. Speaker, let's do this one more time. This is what we are actually doing. The interim federal health program covers limited temporary health coverage to vulnerable people who are not yet eligible for provincial coverage. It covers essential services. It is not for luxury item, and the cost is tied to volumes. As I have said on and on again, we have reduced that volume by 60% from 2024. We will keep reducing that pressure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
The minister just said that the program is temporary. That's what it was designed to do. But the PBO said today that failed asylum claimants, people who are supposed to be removed from the country, are getting benefits like vision care and physiotherapy for years. And that's why the cost is mushrooming year after year. $1 billion could build a hospital. Instead, it's going to failed asylum claimants. That's not fair. Why won't she cancel these luxury benefits?
The Honourable Minister.
This is what the PBO actually said today. The PBO said that within 3 years we will see substantial savings from changes to the supplemental coverage. $200+ million. We will also see another $200+ million in annual savings from the asylum reform measures that we took in C-12. Thank you for finally agreeing to put that law into action. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Okanagan Lake West South Kelowna.
When Canadians go through airport security, they submit to invasive screening, medical implants flagged, personal items confiscated, even emptying their baby bottles. Yet a worker at Pearson says you could bring a cruise missile through without detection. Canadians have already been detained abroad because of security failures here at home. Will the part-time Minister of Transport admit these failures put Canadians at risk and apologize to those whose lives and reputations have already been harmed by his inaction?
Again, we have to use proper titles, but we'll go to the Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the RCMP has investigated this matter, and they've arrested 6 individuals in this case. It's a serious offense to change luggage tags, Mr. Speaker. The RCMP is working with airport authorities, working with other international partners, and we're going to continue putting investments into the RCMP by increasing them by 1,000 new members so that we can continue doing the work that's needed to crack down on organized crime.
Member for Okanagan, Lake West, South Kelowna.
So who's minding business at Pearson right now? That answer of 1,000 members someday isn't going to work. If these gaps exist at Pearson, our largest airport, why would Canadians believe they don't exist somewhere else? Will the Liberal government commit, yes or no, to conducting the same security audits at every major airport in Canada, tabling those findings here in Parliament for all Canadians to see? If they won't, is this because this part-time Minister of Transport has no idea how bad it is, or does he just have no idea what to do?
Again, I warned the member already. We must call members by their proper titles, and we'll go to the Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are determined on cracking down against organized crime, and that is why we've invested $1.3 billion into our borders. That includes our airports, Mr. Speaker. This is the most substantial investment ever made by a government to beef up our security at our borders. It includes new technology, it includes new personnel for the RCMP, so that we can catch organized crime that are committing these offences, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Caribou, Prince George.
In the fall of 2024, a senior in Prince George returned home to find his house being ransacked and robbed. When he tried to stop the perpetrators, they ran over him, dragged him down a road, and left him for dead. They were caught later that day and released just hours later. The victim's family has just been informed the charges against the perpetrators have been dropped.
Wow.
They left him for dead, and they got off scot-free.
Wow.
When will this Liberal Prime Minister finally put victims before criminals?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, from the first conversation I had with this Prime Minister, he has asked us to strengthen Canada's criminal laws so we can protect communities and build a safer Canada. Mr. Speaker, we have advanced Bill C-14, the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act, which represents some of the strongest measures in the criminal code in generations. People who commit serious crimes and threaten public safety should be incarcerated. I hope that we can have the collaboration of all members of this House to advance these laws to protect communities and ensure every Canadian can go to bed safe at night.
Member for Caribou, Prince George.
The victim was ran over, dragged down a road, and left for dead. And the perpetrators are scot-free. The victim now lives in fear that they're going to finish the job. He suffered broken ribs, flailed chest, brain damage, and needed facial reconstruction surgery. And the perpetrators are free to do this again. Under the Liberals, criminals face zero accountability, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are fed up. And that is this government's legacy. Will the Prime Minister stand up today and commit to calling this senior who's afraid for his life and explain to him and his family why the perpetrators are scot-free?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me condemn in the harshest possible terms acts of violence committed against innocent Canadians. I have good news for the member opposite. There is something he can do to help. He can add his voice to support the various pieces of criminal legislation that has come before this House that we are seeking to have royal assent very, very soon. Mr. Speaker, the legislation that we have put forward has been informed by municipal governments, by provincial governments, and from law enforcement officials in every corner of this country. It has the support of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, the Ontario Police Association, and in fact, the provincial government in his home province. I would ask that all members of this House get on with the business of making Canada safer.
The Honourable Member for Oakville West.
Mr.
Speaker, when women and gender diverse Canadians face barriers to entering the workforce, accessing leadership opportunities, or living free from violence, it doesn't just impact individuals. It holds back the entire economy and our communities. Organizations across Canada are working every day to support survivors, expand opportunities, and build safer, more inclusive communities, but they need stable and timely support. After obstruction from the Conservatives, our budget is now delivering support for these organizations. Can the Minister for Women and Gender Equality update this House how these investments will strengthen support across Canada? Thank you.
For women and gender equality.
Mr. Speaker, building the strongest economy in the G7 means full and equal participation of women and gender diverse Canadians. This is why I announced $77 million in funding to extend projects to nearly 400 organizations for women and to us LGBTQI+ communities across Canada. These are organizations on the front lines, like the Victim Services of Peel Region, who are helping women thrive in the workforce, support victims of the gender-based violence, Mr. Speaker. These are building more inclusive communities across the country, and that is how we're going to build Canada strong.
Well done.
The honourable member for Cloverdale Langley City.
Economists and business voices across the country are warning that when people no longer trust the rules around property ownership, investment disappears, housing slows down, and affordability gets worse. We're now seeing stalled projects, bankrupt developers, and fewer homes being built while young Canadians lose hope of ownership. But this Liberal government calls that fear-mongering. Instead of admitting there's a huge problem, they keep acting like everything's just okie-dokie. Did the Liberals vote down our Conservative motion to protect property rights yesterday because they are completely blind to this very real problem?
Yep. The Honourable Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The motion that was presented yesterday was full of false information, including when they talked about the Musqueam Agreement. Mr. Speaker, the Musqueam Agreement is available online, but I know the Conservatives haven't read it. I'll feel free to read 5.1. The Musqueam Agreement does not constitute a treaty or land claims agreement. Section 5.2. The agreement does not create, amend, define, establish, abrogate, or derogate from Musqueam's rights and titles. The whole agreement is available online, and I encourage them to read it.
The honourable member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government calls concerns about private property rights fear-mongering. Yet the Liberals, as the #1 defendant, are appealing the Cowichan decision.
Right. It's a fact. It's not fear.
Now the Liberal government is depending entirely on Montrose Properties, a private business, to defend private properties on behalf of Canadians. On top of this, the Liberals voted against a Conservative motion that would protect private property rights. Canadian homeowners deserve certainty and clarity. Will this Liberal Prime Minister secure private property rights of Canadians and provide economic certainty while creating respectful partnerships with First Nations?
Yes.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government, the federal government, the province, the City of Richmond, Musqueam, Tsawwassen, and Cowichan are all appealing the Cowichan decision. There's also another court case. It's in New Brunswick. The Court of Appeal reached a very different conclusion than in Cowichan. So we now have two courts in Canada taking very different approaches. That divergence is exactly why clarity from the courts is required, and that's the clarity that we're seeking in the Cowichan case. The Cowichan case is active litigation, including today, and will defend private property.
Good job.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Centre Marlpole.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Housing Minister accused Conservatives of fear-mongering over the Cowichan ruling, but the impact is already real and immediate.
That's right.
Export reports in March warned Richmond property value could fall by 40% because of uncertainty created by this government. Families, homeowners, and businesses are worried. Yet the Liberals remain in denial.
That's right.
Denying the impact and denying the litigation directive was a mistake. When will the government wake up and restore certainty for homeowners?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, our government knows that the path of reconciliation with First Nations is how Canada moves forward as a country. Negotiated agreements like that with Tsawwassen in my riding of Delta are one solution. With Cowichan, negotiations failed and the case went to the courts. We disagree with the BC Supreme Court decision and have filed our appeal. Our government has and will always defend private property ownership.
The honourable member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, during the last election, we committed to connecting Canada's electricity grids from east to west rather than north to south. Can the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources share with this House how we are going to build those interconnections, grow Canada's clean electricity capacity, ensure families and businesses can decarbonize affordably and reliably?
The Honourable Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for his leadership on this issue. If we want to build one strong Canadian economy, strengthen our energy security, and seize the economic opportunities of electrification, we need a more connected grid from east to west. That's why our national electricity strategy will refer the development of a new comprehensive transmission interconnect investment strategy to the Major Projects Office. The strategy will help grow our electricity grid and help us become more climate competitive. We've now launched a consultation period to hear from Canadians, and we look forward to working together to build the clean electricity backbone Canada needs for our future.
The honourable member for Central Newfoundland.
Mr. Speaker, Brett Cox, a fisherman from English Harbour West, reached out to me yesterday and said, we need the tariff gone on sea cucumber or that fishery is done. He's referring to the 25% Chinese tariff, which still applies to all Canadian seafood except lobster and crab products. And China is the second largest market for our seafood. So if this Liberal Prime Minister's new relationship with China is beneficial to Canada, why are these crippling tariffs still in place?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Mr. Speaker, I want to ask, I haven't heard from this member since the day he called the school food program garbage, so it's nice to hear him stand in the House. We continue to work, my counterparts work, to remove tariffs. But I want to ask this member, in the spring economic update, the nearly $1 billion for small craft harbors. Is this member going to vote to support this?
The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, workers know progress is won by exercising their right to strike. The 8-hour workday, maternity leave, or fair living wages. Yet the Liberals keep violating this right by using Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code, ending strikes without a fair deal. That's why I tabled Bill C-247 to repeal this strike-breaking tool. Supported by the CLC, CUPE, CUPW, PSAC, the Teamsters, Steelworkers, and more. So will the Liberals stop attacking workers and support my bill?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
The real question, Mr. Speaker, is will that member vote for the spring economic update that invests $6 billion into working people, including in skilled trades workers, in unions, Mr. Speaker, and the people across this country that are not only bringing in the next generation of tradespeople, but ensuring these good union jobs are full with people that have the opportunity to take advantage of them. Mr. Speaker, there's big things to be done in this country, and we're going to do them together with strong union members.
The honourable member for Vancouver East.
Fossil fuel lobby had at least 17 direct meetings with the Prime Minister. Environmental groups had 0. The Prime Minister axed the carbon tax, abandoned emissions cap, killed the EV mandate, signed a deal to build a new pipeline, stepped up on greenwashing, took a sledgehammer to regulatory reviews, created a $25 billion wealth fund, no doubt will benefit the oil and gas industry, and refused to impose an excess profit tax when they're poised to make over $90 billion profit this year alone. Can the Prime Minister tell Canadians what else do the oil and gas industry want?
That's right. The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
I appreciate that the member opposite, who's a member from British Columbia, has stood up because it gives me an opportunity to talk about the fact that I just came back from the coastal waters in British Columbia, where we established a National Marine Conservation Area Reserve with 6 First Nations province of British Columbia. It's going to protect an area larger than the size of Prince Edward Island. This is a chance for us to do good work in partnership. That is what we're doing. We're protecting the environment, we're protecting nature, and we're building strong connections with our communities.
I wish to draw the attention of members to the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Colton LeBlanc, Minister of Growth and Development and Minister of Acadian Affairs and La Francophonie for the province of Nova Scotia.